Welcome to our Monday teaching on Galatians. We're looking this week at chapter 2, verses 11 to 14. And here we're going to see Paul stab Peter in the front, so to speak. Paul says, when Cephas, that's Peter, came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned, or he was clearly in the wrong. So what's going on? Paul got all up in the face of Peter, got all up in his business. Why? Why is Paul in Peter's face? And the answer is given in verse 14, when I saw that they were not acting in line with the gospel. So Paul is all about the gospel, isn't he? Paul wants to live the gospel. He wants to reveal the gospel. Now, so does Peter. But in this case, he's not doing so. He's just not acting like it. So what's Peter really doing here? And why is Paul so riled up about it? Well, it turns out, if you look at verse 12, that Peter used to eat with the Gentiles. That means that he fellowshipped with them, that he accepted them, that he made them feel welcome. He used to. But then some Jews came along, and Peter feared these Jews and what they would think about him eating with the unclean. Those Gentile dogs, the uncircumcised. And so Peter withdrew, and he separated himself from them, and he stopped eating with them. And Peter, as it were, left the gospel table and went over to the law table. And Paul is confronting him on this because Peter had even led Barnabas astray. And Paul says, you're not acting in line with the gospel. The gospel. In other words, Paul is pointing Peter to the cross and saying, look, Peter, you were once unclean in your sin. And guess what? Jesus took your uncleanness on himself so that you would be clean forever. Look at the cross, Peter. Jesus is being shut out of God's presence so that you are welcomed in. And God himself will now eat with you and fellowship with you. He welcomes you. The cross shouts loudly, you are welcomed, you are accepted, you are included. But Peter is ruining that picture. He's drawing back from those that God is drawing near. He is separating from those that God has joined to the body of Christ. He's pushing out those whom God has brought in. And so Peter is not acting in line with the gospel. And that has Paul all fired up. It's like if we were to say, you used to be a porn addict? Well, you can join our fellowship, but you need to sit over there, by yourself, kind of be quiet. Oh, you were a homosexual? You were a drunk? You were divorced and remarried? Well, there's a special table for you, for your kind, right over there. Think of, for a minute, how that would make the Gentiles feel. Oh, maybe God doesn't accept me. Maybe I'm still unclean. Maybe I really haven't changed. I guess I'll just sit over here by myself in the corner. And now you're a second-class Christian. And they have no welcome and no fellowship and no love. And that is not in line with the gospel. Think of something else here as you look at this passage, how Paul was being like Christ here. Do you see that? He was defending the outcast. He was interceding on behalf of the sidelined and the margined. He was speaking up for those who were being pushed away. And let this show you what Jesus does for you today, as he ever lives to intercede for you today. Now, why is Paul telling the Galatians this story? It's because the Galatians are being tempted to leave the gospel table and go join the law-keeping table. They're being tempted to do the same thing. And that is not acting in line with the gospel. Here's a question for you today. In this story that we're reading and that we just talked about, in this story, who are you? Are you maybe the Gentiles? The ones being avoided and rejected, being pushed away? If so, we want to pray for you, for each other this week. Or are you Peter? You're avoiding people because of their past, or because of their skin color, or because of their political persuasion, even though they're in the body of Christ. Or are you Paul? You speaking up for the outcast. You're defending the gospel by defending those who are being pushed away. Do you see yourself in this story? Let's talk about it this week. I look forward to hearing from you.